Carolina's home crowd environment wasn't enough to win the SEC tournament.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball, your team every day. Thank you so much for being an everydayer as well and making the Locked On Sports Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. I'm Clea Butler, the sideline reporter for the Chicago Sky. Alongside me is Sophia Jones, the radio analyst for the Golden State Valkyries. Sophia, what should we be on the lookout for today?
Each of the Power Four tournament title games had their own surprises.
A little mix and match. It's always exciting, especially around this time of year. You just never know what's going to happen. But today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential winnings with college basketball parlay profit boost. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel. Play your game. So, as Sophia beautifully mentioned earlier, it was tournament time this weekend. Obviously, more tournament time heading towards the end of this month and this upcoming week. But there was a lot to discuss when it came to these conference tournaments. Some upsets, some surprises, and some outright winners that we just knew were going to get the title. But one of the most surprising ones had to be the SEC tournament because South Carolina was toppled by Texas, handing them a pretty comfortable defeat, which is one of the largest that they have had so far this season. It was 78-61 victory in the first SEC tournament title. It was never leaving its lead to the double digits in this one. So Texas came away with a victory that Vic Schaefer was kind of surprised by, almost in a way, where he was just like, we came in, we had more grit here. I think they not only surprised themselves, but they knew that they could do it. But a lot of people were surprised that South Carolina wasn't able to pull this one off.
It's the fashion that Texas won this game. They stunned South Carolina from the jump. They got out to a 14-0 lead. They were 7 of 7, so perfect from the field. And they looked like the more physical and assertive team overall. In that same stretch, they scored 6 points in the paint, and South Carolina had 1 field goal attempt with 5 turnovers. So immediately, Texas has taken South Carolina out of their game because they're usually very dominant in the paint and have great ball security. And South Carolina was in scramble mode ever since then. They had an extreme lack of offensive execution and a lack of willingness for individuals to force the issue. That stood out to me because against LSU in their semifinal win, even when the play broke down, when players would get the ball, they would make something happen. They would get to the paint, spray it out, or just try to finish really strong inside. That was not the case against Texas. And Tanaya Latson, South Carolina guard, said it herself after the game that they came into the game with the mindset of they're tired, and it showed on the court.
I think this is what we saw the first time that these two teams had played each other too. Maybe less of the tired aspect because it was the beginning of the season, but there was still a tournament when we're thinking of the style of play that they were playing in, not just a regular game. And Texas just showed that they wanted it a little bit more in that non-conference game all the way back in their Vegas tournament towards the beginning of the season. And I think that kind of proved true in this one as well. Not that South Carolina doesn't want it, but Vic Schaefer himself said, I had some kids that were on a mission. Now, Texas has not been in the SEC for very long. This is only their second season being in it. And Madison Booker afterwards said that we belong in the SEC. She had 14 points just in the second half of the tournament. She had 18 and averaged 20 points on 61% shooting in the tournament. So she came in, she wins the MVP on top of it. We see what a stellar performance she has had all season long. But there's even a deeper meaning of obviously Texas being able to get a win over South Carolina, that being a large feat in itself of Vic Schaefer trying to beat Dawn Staley essentially 9 times and being able to do that twice in one season this year. But on top of it, there's added component of South Carolina has really ran the SEC for women's basketball for quite some time now, even considering, an LSU. The fact that Texas, only in their second season of being in the SEC, moving from the Big 12, getting a victory like this is just really strong for their program.
And South Carolina looked comfortable during the second half of league play, making this win for Texas even bigger. When you look at South Carolina beating LSU, it was an emotional win for them. And then the game before, they beat Kentucky, but they're just on a roll. So for Texas to come in and completely dismantle their team again from the very start, I can't stress that enough, is a major boost to this program. And Vic Schaefer even said that on the board in the locker room. He mentioned that the game will be about toughness, resilience, and bringing an edge. All those things are intangibles that all going up in someone's mind. And that was really important because after the Vanderbilt loss that Texas suffered, he said that he felt like this team was one of the softest he's coached. So now turning and flipping that page and out-toughing South Carolina, a team that doesn't get out-toughed very often at all, is a major resume booster.
I think it's interesting even seeing the difference of Vic Schaefer kind of going off on his team a little bit after the Vanderbilt game in comparison to a Tennessee and Coach Caldwell going off and them having a losing streak towards the end of the season. Not overly trying to compare here, but I feel like the players on Texas know that Vic Schaefer was saying that out of love and knowingness that this team can perform much better than what they had against Vanderbilt. And I mean, they've really been on a tear ever since. And the fact that they came into the SEC tournament with the mindset that they were going to come out with a victory, again, topping a South Carolina team. I will say that South Carolina was not playing their best basketball, and that's what Coach Staley said as well. Not that discredits anything that Texas was able to do, because them getting out on a 14-0 lead and just being able to maintain that essentially the entirety of the game is incredible. But head coach Dawn Staley also said that I told them the last time we were in this situation, we won the national championship. This is talking about having a loss and being able to bounce back from something like this and not being able to repeat. She said this loss actually might be the very thing that this team needs. It's not what I would want or what I think coming into today, but now they're here and it's a reality. So you have to search for things that have a connection, that you can give your team what it needs to make this run for a national championship. I do think we have enough in the room to do that. So there might be a little bit of a revenge tour from South Carolina coming up in the NCAA tournament, which can make for an exciting run for themselves. But the fashion that they had lost in last year, wanting to come back, now losing the SEC tournament, South Carolina kind of has a lot to prove again to themselves. So they might make for a scary championship run once this next week comes up.
Dawn Staley is already trying to instill this lose the battle but win the war mentality, thinking big picture of the NCAA tournament. But even looking at this season, when they lost to Texas in technically non-conference play back in late November, they finished the non-conference schedule really strong. When they lost at Oklahoma in overtime, right during the middle of league play, they finished the rest probably the most dominant that they had played all season. So similar to what Coach Staley said, this could be the exact thing that the team needs to flip the script, because it wasn't much on court that needed fixing. It was the mentality of their players coming into every game. And especially when you're looking at the lack of having to play 3 straight days, which South Carolina had to do leading into the Texas matchup, that could benefit them because, like Tanai Latson said, they had a tired mindset going into the game.
Well, we will see what that mindset looks like as they head into the NCAA tournament. But obviously, a congratulations to Texas being able to get their first SEC title. But stay with us because UCLA went back to back in an astounding fashion. Spring is a natural reset point, and if there's one thing that can quietly cost business money, it's messy communication. Missed calls, scattered texts, no clear thread of who said what. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2 with over 3,000 reviews, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses. It lets your entire team share one business number so you never miss a call, text, or opportunity. Everything lives in one clean thread, and that's what I love most about Quo because the calls, texts, voicemails can all be seen in one place. I don't have to go to a bunch of different places to find it because we all know that between your text messages, your email threads, voicemails, everything can get jumbled up. So it just makes your business feel more organized and responsive. Make this season make this the season no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedonnba. That's quo.com/lockedonnba. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Shoot your shot on Prize Picks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right. Prize Picks is now giving you $50 in lineups when you sign up and play your first $5 lineup. And it makes every dunk, every assist, and every big play that much more exciting. Prize Picks is the #1 daily fantasy sports picks app, and it's super simple to play. It's easy. You pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. And if your picks are right, you can cash in. Now, I'm not somebody that is really great at understanding sports betting, but I have used Prize Picks before. So if I can figure out and do the more or less, so can you. And it's really convenient being able to just choose the couple of players that I think are going to hit above a certain amount of rebounds, points, whatever the case may be, and go from there. It's a really fun way to test your sports knowledge and stay locked in on the action. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. UCLA's dominance continues, and I said it before, they're looking like the UConn of the Big Ten right now. And there's actually a pretty interesting comparison to talk about with them, but we'll get into their win in the Big Ten tournament first. They played Iowa and had a 51-point win, which is the largest in the history of the storied conference tournament title game and the biggest win ever by a Division I team against a top 10 opponent. They dismantled Iowa 96-45, and they're just getting a little scary, truthfully, because we always talk about your team wanting to play their best basketball in March. UCLA has been playing their best basketball, honestly, all season long. They really have not fell off truly at any point, especially when we're looking at conference play where they went undefeated. Then they go undefeated in the conference tournament to get the titles. So they get the regular season title, they get the post play title as well. They had 34 assists. And when we're talking about the seniority and maturity of this team too, that's a stat that stands out so much because they just move so incredibly well with each other. And that's because they've been playing year after year with each other, where we're talking about another team that can have a scary run in this NCAA tournament. South Carolina could be on a revenge tour, but UCLA is just looking too good and too comfortable.
They are clicking on all cylinders right now. And I love that you highlighted those 34 assists because that was on a total of 40 made field goals for the whole game. So everyone is sharing the wealth. And even looking at this team going into the tournament, they were extremely dominant in the Big Ten. They went undefeated. the three players, Charlize Ledger-Walker, Lauren Betts, and Gabriela Jaquez, they joined the dance team during one of their segments and did a dance with them. But that is the level of confidence that this team is playing with. Confidence, but also relaxation. And it showed against Iowa, who is an overall number 9 seed, but in the Big Ten, they were the number 2 seed. So this isn't a Hawkeyes team that really had to scrap their way through the conference and found themselves in the championship game. No, this is a legit team that has earned their way there, finished the second half of the season really strong, but UCLA, so dominant. The paint is where they have really resided a lot of the season. They outscored Iowa 44-16. So again, just establishing residency in there. But they were also 13 of 19 or 13 of 26 from the 3-point line. So an equal 50%. Those are tremendous shooting numbers. And again, just goes to show why UCLA is looking like UConn West Coast version.
Exactly. I think one of my favorite quotes from the Sky season was from Angel Reese talking about Camila Cardoso. She was like, "You can't teach 6'7". That's exactly what I think about when you're thinking about Lauren Betts and just the dominance that they have on the interior. She's just unstoppable, truly. And then, as you just mentioned too, just the shot selection that they're having from the perimeter and the efficiency that they're having, it's really a lose-lose for many teams. But the big picture of all of this is that they have a potential to be the number 1 seed for the tournament. Does that mean that they could possibly surpass UConn to do so, who has obviously been undefeated all season long? But UCLA now has 10 more quad 1 wins. Their 18 quad 1 wins are the most in the country. 6 fewer quad 4 wins. But UCLA's lone defeat came to the then number 4 Texas, who also obviously now just won the SEC tournament. So the odds are actually looking pretty strong for UCLA to possibly top a UConn. But I feel like there would be a lot of almost backlash in a way if UConn was no longer the number 1 seed, who has literally been the unanimous number 1 vote all season long without any losses. But again, some of those quad 1 wins are really favoring UCLA right now. They have 10 more of them.
Voters are either going to look at resume, in which case you would lean towards UCLA getting that number 1 overall seed, or they'll do the eye test. Which team just looks the best? Which, in my opinion, is UConn. So I think UConn will still get that number 1 seed. You also look at the quality of players that are on the Huskies, where AZ Fudd is predicted to go over Lauren Betts in this 2026 WNBA draft. Sarah Strong, she's a favorite to win the Wooden Award, so National College Player of the Year. That top-end talent does beat out UCLA's, and where I still think you give the edge towards the Huskies, even looking what they're doing in the Big East, not as competitive of a conference as the Big Ten, but they are steamrolling every single team.
And many people agree with you. Just looking over articles, we see how dominant UCLA is being, but UConn is just constantly in a stratosphere of their own. Truthfully, there's been a lot of people just saying, long story short, UCLA does have the better resume, but based on the top 16 reveals and how dominant UConn is, I do not see an undefeated defending champion not being the number 1 overall. And that's another added aspect of it, is that they are also coming off the national championship as well. They have an undefeated season. They're breaking all these records. And as you say, the eye test, which plays a big part of this tournament as well at times, when you have an AZ Fudd, a Sarah Strong, even a KK Arnold, when you have a whole bench that can beat a team as well, which we have seen them do in Big East play, it's really hard not to keep them at that number 1 spot. But we will see when we get to selection show Sunday coming up this Sunday, which is really exciting. But stay with us, because Duke absolutely turned their season around.
College basketball is nonstop. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night. From early tip-offs to late-night West Coast shootouts, there's always action on the board. And now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. It's March. We all know it's March Madness. There's so many games going on and a lot of opportunities to get in on the action. Really, I feel like there's not that much passion that goes, or incomparable passion as people who have money on a team compared to others. So you can definitely get in on that. So head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com, FanDuel, play your game. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is the job for sponsored jobs. Indeed, sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of the show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help you get the job premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs.
When we're looking at what Duke was doing towards the beginning of this season, it's been a complete turnaround for this program, even towards the end of their regular season when they came off those 2 losses in conference play, their first losses of conference play in general. We're talking about these teams that are having a mindset to get back in the winning column. Duke is that team. They defeated Louisville 70-65 to win back-to-back ACC tournament titles. What does this mean for the Duke program? And obviously, again, all this kind of goes leading into Selection Show Sunday and seeding, and some of these teams just making a significant run who we saw them do last year.
That game was extremely gritty. And that's what stood out to me the most. And what Duke's biggest takeaway should be is that they can win games by making it look ugly and being the grittier team. They found ways to win within the margins. Like I said, offense wasn't all there defensively, but they held Louisville down. Duke got a ton of offensive rebounds that really kept them in the game. Some of them were game-deciding plays. They finished with 19 offensive rebounds on the day, but they also made their free throws. They were defending without fouling. They had to come back after being down the majority of the fourth quarter. Then it was back and forth. They forced overtime. And in overtime, they were the more poised team, hit some huge shots. And like I said, they just out-gritted Louisville at the end.
Amari Berry, one of those players that was hitting huge shots. And I think that's who I kept seeing get clipped the most on Instagram after the games, because she was just on fire towards the end. But you honestly kind of worded it beautifully. Duke doesn't always have the prettiest games, and I think that has been a common theme for them over the past couple of seasons because a lot of it is dependent on their defense. So they are going to be the gritty team. They are going to fight for every possession. They're going to fight for 50 balls. They're physical. They're going to be very scrappy. But at the end of the day, that is what's going to wear their opponents down. So it's not always the highest scoring games. This was honestly maybe one of the higher scoring games we have seen for them this season because it went into overtime, but still a 70-65 victory. Their defense has kept them going this entirety of the season essentially, and then being able to bounce back from those back-to-back conference losses to come in and have this win was huge. When we're looking at even just some of the awards that were won at this tournament, Tana Mayer from Duke got the MVP of the tournament, and she also made the ACC first team. Riley Nelson also made the ACC first team, and then you had multiple players from Duke on the ACC second team. There's honestly more Duke players with getting all of these titles compared to anybody else in the ACC. But Louisville had gave them a run for their money during the season. Louisville has given a lot of teams a run for their money throughout the season. We obviously saw that UConn game where even Coach Ariema said, I'm happy that we came out with a victory over them. They were a tough team to get by. These are still looking like two of the top teams to come out of the ACC for the tournament.
100%. Like we said, with a team like Duke, if they can make a game ugly with their defense, they have enough of that killer mindset offensively to find a way to get it done. And as for Louisville, they still made it a very close game. I thought they came out and had some great out of timeout plays and execution to keep the game close and force overtime. But they just couldn't get past Duke's defense or box out. But those are, again, very minimal. And because those are mindset shifts, they can be triggered heading into the NCAA tournament.
Looking at the Big 12, there was an upset with West Virginia beating TCU 62-53. Now, West Virginia lost to TCU twice during the regular season, but they came back with a vengeance. But when we're talking about another team that didn't necessarily look like they were playing their best basketball that day, TCU was one of those teams. And it's really hard when we're talking about some of those key players. Obviously, Olivia Miles for this team, she was playing with a couple of fouls. She had got in foul trouble early. When you take your best player, your leading facilitator, your leading scorer out the equation, it makes it very difficult for you to win.
Leader in so many categories, also can throw in rebounding and vocally. And because Olivia Miles never got any offensive rhythm, TCU's offensive flow really struggled. A ton of credit to West Virginia's defense because they 100% forced it to be that way. TCU only shot 33% field goal on the game, 26% from three, so pretty low numbers. And that they were led by their defensive player of the year, Jordan Harrison, in that regard. So another team that used defense to win a championship, a phrase we've never heard before in our lives.
Yes, but with this loss, TCU will still remain in the NCAA's top 16 seeds for the second straight season. So they're going to hope to ideally be in that Fort Worth region and stay within Texas so that they can have their opportunities of being, in a home city and find some success. But Coach Campbell said, this hurts, but I'm so proud of what our programs accomplished. They were the regular season champions, but we will see what they are capable of doing in this NCAA tournament. Sophia, if you can put a quick bow around what this weekend looked like, give me a word or a phrase or a quick sentence.
Chaotic is the word I'm thinking of right now.
A lot of chaos, but good chaos. This is exactly what we love to see during this time of year. But thank you all so much for tuning into Locked On Women's Basketball. We will keep you up to date on everything headed into Selections Show Sunday, so stick with us.